Today I wanted to revisit one of my older scenes from one of the older studios I worked at and kind of reanimate the shot to show you guys my full process of what I like to think about when I animate. So this will be pretty close to any shot that you get in a studio, so hopefully this will give you some insight on what it's like to animate at an animation studio. So I find the best way to animate a shot is to kind of do it in passes. Breaking a shot down into chunks, breaking a character movement down into little pieces really helps you keep control of your scene, and it gives you better quality, and it helps you get your shots done faster. Okay, so first thing I always focus on is the timing and spacing of these actions. I want to nail that down before I do anything else. So basically the timing, how long is this action going to take? And the spacing is there going to be any ease on these keyframes? So here's a kind of a neat trick. If I go to like frame 9 and I press start, and then I'll go to frame 31, press stop, now Toon Boom will just play that part of my animation, so I can kind of isolate it. So the timing is looking pretty good. I want this to be sort of a quick motion, but I still want it to read. So let's move this over 1 and this over 1 as well, just to have it happen a little bit later. I'm also looking at how does this action line up with my dialogue. So I want her to come up when she says ew, right? So I need her to hit that before she says ew. I'm liking the timing. So now let's go Control K and add a couple of tweens. Let's move it over one more actually. Okay. Now we're gonna add the ease. So if we play this with just a regular tween, it's super robotic and it's super like stiff. So let's select these keyframes. I'm thinking I'm going to ease her out of this action. So she's gonna, if we draw it up here, her speed is kind of gonna slow, speed up, and then slow down again. So kind of like an S curve. So let's add some ease. We're gonna go, let's say like 65, apply next. Now on these keyframes, I'm not gonna add any ease because I want it to go speed up. Apply next, and now these keyframes I want it to slow in this way, so I'll add another ease like 65. Now when we play this, right, still looking stiff, but the movement at least has some, the speed is kind of varying, so it's a little more interesting. There's still more we can do. So this is kind of a trick I learned on the show that I'm working at now. If I kind of want to extend this ease a little bit more, I'll keyframe 2 frames on either side and just move keyframes farther down the timeline. It keeps the position, but the movement happens over a longer period of time, so the ease is a little bit slower, right? And it's a little softer. There's a little more cushion on either side. I like that. So that's exactly what we want. She slows out, she speeds up, and kind of bounces up and settles into her pose. So that is the timing and spacing for this action, basically our first pass. So the first thing I like to loosen up is the head. So I'll go in, maybe to the head and neck there. See how I'm working on that now? And I'll try and like add some overshoot, maybe drag the head a little bit. So as she goes down on, let's say this frame, we'll get rid of this. I'm gonna have her eyebrows come up a little bit. And then I'm going to move her head back just a little bit. And this is, you have to be very, very subtle. Right, there you go, that little subtle movement. I like that. But if I were to do too much, right, it's too much movement, too short of a time. So that's looking good. As she comes down, I'm gonna do, I don't think I need that. Comes up, let's try to kind of do the same thing in the other direction. So on this frame, I'm gonna have her head forward and drag a little bit. I'll have her eyebrows, oops, down. And I like to keep my motion keyframes on this because Toon Boom, I find, adjusts the other parts of the rig a little bit better. So actually, let's try this. So we have the head dragging. Let's select all these frames and move them one or two frames over. So now the head starts 2 frames after the body. Right, and that kind of loosens up our animation even more. That works. I think we can get away with it. Already, our animation is feeling a little bit looser. I think now the last thing we need to do on the head for this stage is let's kind of overshoot the eyes. So I'm on the eye layer, but I'll just shift select my pupils so I don't select those. Actually, let's drop a keyframe here. Because I want to overshoot on this and then settle back to the original position. So shift select the pupils so I don't select them. I'm gonna stretch and squash the eyes a bit. So when they come up, they kind of settle like this. Now, the problem is these 2 keyframes were keyed when my other eyes were in this position. So I need to remove these and we'll just redo the keyframes. So now it's a little smoother when it comes up like this. Let's tween this to settle back down. And I want to favor this keyframe, so I'll click this, drag it, and now there's an ease into my last pose. Maybe we can kind of move the eyebrows up a bit. Right, and now same thing, I gotta redo these keyframes. Redo this keyframe. So that was our second pass. The first pass, just the overall timing and spacing of the body. The second pass, I go in and do the head. And now we're gonna go in and loosen up the arms. Start with this arm first. And we're gonna be working right on the arm layer for this. So now, let's see. As the arm comes in, I'm gonna skew it a little bit and move it up just a tiny bit. So there's a little bit of extra anticipation and it's moving more in an arc. That was good. Nothing we really need to do here. But as the arm comes up, I'm going to drag it a little bit more. So let's drag this. And before I connect the joints, I want to make sure the overall movement is working. Here, and then it slows in. So let's switch this drawing substitution to match. Nice. Just match these elbows. And the same thing we did with the eye expression. So I dropped this keyframe, which kind of changes these 2. So I'm going to get rid of them and kind of redo the ease. So it might work a little bit better. We got the overall arm movement working, more or less. Let me go into the forearm now and see if there's any drag I can add. So let's drag the forearm a little bit as it comes in. Let's drag the forearm down a bit more here. Okay, I'm liking that. And then I think let's go in and do the hand. Now, same thing. You're not going to see the hand, so we don't really need to care about it until here. So it's dragging. And then here, let's have it move slightly forward and settle like this. Okay, overall movement of the arm is good. But now let's add some overshoot. So as the arm comes like this, I don't really want it to like go back and forth. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go on my arm layer. And this frame in the middle of these 2, I'm going to drop a keyframe like this, and then I'll extend the arm down the timeline. So it kind of has a softer accent, but it still stops at a different time. Make sure you close the layer, the peg layer. It makes it a little easier to work with. This one, probably not going to touch too much here. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag the whole thing, just like we did with the head. I'll drag it 2 frames over. Right? And that loosens things up a lot. So we just need to go in now and readjust the shoulders. Let's adjust this guy. Let's adjust this. And this is where the motion keyframes come in handy because I adjust just one peg and Toon Boom kind of does the rest for me. So this, This needs to be adjusted. Now our shoulders match up. Nice, and I kind of like the overall movement of the arm already. I think the one thing we need to do is see how this arm kind of moves up like a clock arm, basically. I don't really like that. We kind of want to get a little bit more foreshortening in this arm. So let's go to the forearm layer so it doesn't look so cut out. And I'm going to, well, first of all, let's switch our hand substitutions so we know what we're doing. Get rid of it. Okay, let's make this a little bit bigger. Kind of just adjust our forearm so it's a little bit more circular, a little bit more foreshortening. Normally you probably would draw a new hand, but I feel we can just get away with this. So here, and then same thing, I'm going to redo these keyframes so it has a smoother action. Now I think for this arm, I also want to do, now we're back on the arm layer, I'm going to go 3 frames over. I just want to have a little bit of overshoot to this arm. So kind of vary up the timing a little bit. We'll go here, just like this, and then we'll keyframe this and drop it down. So when she comes up, it kind of has another extra layer of movement onto it. Well, if you notice, there's still some places in the rig where the lines don't exactly match up. I'm going to go in now and match up these lines as much as I can before we move on to the next stage. So we're making progress. I think the next step would be to loosen up like all the extra extremities, like the hair, if there's any loose clothing, in this case the tail, maybe even the breast. We gotta add a little bit of bounce to those. That is gonna finish off and polish off this animation. Factor in cutout animation is knowing how the rig works, right? That is a big factor when it comes to making the animation nice. If you're searching for things and you don't know how things work in the rig or where pieces are, it's gonna make it harder to animate. The more you're comfortable using Toon Boom, I feel it will improve your animation as well. So with the hair, the trick would be to, I don't want it to move too much because this movement isn't that big, but I also don't want it to move too little where you can't notice it. So as the hair goes down, we kind of just want it to drag here. So let's drag this out. And then we need to redo our tweens. What I want to do is, I'll come 3 frames out, and I want the hair to overshoot and then settle into this pose. Right, so we have that nice movement at the end. So let's try moving the breasts, I think. If we add some bounce, like at the end, it might add a little bit. So as she goes down, I guess these can squash up a little bit. And then as they come down like this, we're going to have them overshoot. So let's have these drag down and in. We're going to redo these tweens. And then it comes up. We'll favor the end pose. And if we want, we can even try and add a little extra movement at the end. They bounce a little bit. Right, I think that's working. Okay, so we're almost there. I think the only 2 steps left are to convert this animation to 2s and then do the lip sync. To convert this to 2s, I'll be on my top layer, like my body shadow, body master. I'll select everything, and then I'll click this button here. This creates keyframes on whatever number you select. So I'll do 2 because I want to do it on 2s. Press OK. Press OK. There you go. Get rid of this tween. Now our animation is on 2s, and it feels just a little bit better. Before we do the lip sync, we're going to go in each of these frames and check to see if our rig is breaking, if there's pieces that need to be shifted. So far it's looking pretty good. See, like this part. Now you go in and slightly adjust the little parts of your rig. Now we're into the details. If we adjusted these pieces before, like when we had motion keyframes, this process will be a little bit easier. If we kind of skip that step, this process will be a nightmare.
Ew. Ew. Ew.
The last thing to do would be the lip sync for this section. So we'll skip this part.
Ew.
She just needs to say ew.
Ew.
And it's best to do the lip sync last when your animation is on 2s, because it just helps keep things organized. Let's move on to the lip sync. This can be a pretty difficult part of the process. Some people like lip sync, some people hate it, but I feel the more you do it, the better and more comfortable you're gonna get at it. Usually on each show that you work on, the lip sync is gonna be a little bit different. Your supervisors or directors are gonna want it a certain way, so just be aware of that. And it's not really one size fits all. Each scene is different, each person talks differently, so that's why lip sync can be so difficult. That being said, there are a few general rules that you can go by which can help you a lot. I think the first and most important thing would be to hit your mouth shapes early. So the frame that the sound plays, you actually want to have a mouth shape for that sound at least 2 or 4 frames before. You can sometimes get away with it right on the sound, but you never want to have your mouth shape after the sound happens. Then the lip sync doesn't sync up and it's very noticeably wrong. I think the next tip would be to block in the open and closed mouths first, right? Open and closed mouths, you really want to get the timing and the rhythm of those correct. For example, if you look at the Muppets, right? They only have open and closed mouths because they're sock puppets, but their lip sync, it feels so believable because they time it perfectly with the dialogue. Even though there's so many other different mouth shapes to use, focus on the open and closed mouths first, and then build the shapes around that to make it a little bit easier and more manageable. Okay, so let's animate the lip sync on this shot. So what I like to do in lip sync, I like to look at my waveform, my sound wave, to kind of tell me where the loudest shapes are, where her mouth is open, where her mouth is closed. So I'll basically just scroll through a whole bunch of times. Right, she starts her open mouth around this frame, like here or here. That'll be a loud open mouth. And by, let's say, frame like 33, she'll be like a ooh sound, ew. Let's go on our mouth layer now. We'll go to the lips. I think these are drawing substitutions, so it's fine. So she starts opening her, okay. So the sound starts here. We're gonna hit it early. I like to hit mine like 4 frames earlier. Then we'll pop into this. There you go. So she starts to open it, then she's at her loudest. And let's block in the ooh sound now. Ew. Right, so we have our highest mouth and our lowest mouth here. Now we just got to fill in the middle, basically. So, to kind of transition to that. This might not work. Yeah, so to transition into that, let's go here. There. So now, this is working. What we can do to push this even further is now we're on the peg layer for our lips. So I'll go like this. I'll drop this down even more. So it's the same mouth shape. We're gonna open her mouth a little bit. Ash Chef. So she opens it a little wider. Ew. We can even try, where is it? This mouth. That looks a little better. Just kind of seeing which mouth shapes fit best. After I blocked in the big ones, kind of just seeing what is the smoothest action I can get. But I think that's done. Okay, let's check a render preview to see if our lip sync is working. And that's basically what I do. I'll do a lip sync pass, I'll check a render preview, and if it's not working, I'll go back and redo it. If it is working, we move on to the next part of the scene. Now let's play it. Okay, let's just turn off this. The lip sync's working, and I like the movement. It's nice and loose. That's it, guys. That's my full process when I animate a shot, when I take it from posing to animation. So in terms of this shot, I would just have to animate the other action, and then we would call this a finished scene. That's all the time we have for today, guys. If you have any questions about animating in the studio, any questions about this video, any suggestions for me how to make my process better, I would love to hear it in the comments. Let me know. That's all the time we have for today. Thanks for stopping by, and I'll see everybody in the next video. Happy animating.